BFRO or BFRO.net. And I've been actively seeking Bigfoot in Ohio since I've been 18 years old. And I'm presently sitting here at a very young and ripe 51 years old. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been doing this. I've done research with investigators like Don Keating, Marc Francis, Ron Schaffner, just to name a few. Very famous, well-known Ohio investigators. Even the late Betty and Leon Parks I've done stuff with over the years. Bless their soul. Peggy and Veronica Burchett and Peggy Tillman over in Madison County. So yeah, I've been involved in this phenomenon for a very long time. I'm a very big proponent of the Ohio Bigfoot because I've interviewed so many witnesses, and when I say so many, it's over 300 by now, folks. And these are ones that I consider legitimate. There's plenty of others that were quickly ruled out as hoaxes, misidentifications, or just people, they're not seeing anything, just delusional. You're going to get that in all this stuff. But so yeah, it's been a long, long time. I am the organizer of the Ohio Bigfoot Conference that takes place every year in May at Salt Fork State Park Lodge and Conference Center. Matter of fact, this year's event, because of COVID, got moved to August 15th. And as of now, it's still going. It's going to be a lot smaller than normal. It's going to have masks required. So for example, if you do come, you're going to have your mask on for your own safety, for all our safeties. There will be speakers, there will be vendors, but it's going to be very spread out. On a social distancing is going to be definitely done throughout the whole facility. It is a state facility, so you have to file state guidelines, and that's April 15th is the event. Even if you don't have tickets on Saturday the 15th, the vending area is open from like noon to 7, and you still be able to meet the speakers and things like that. My speakers this year are Charlie Raymond of the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, Larry Batson from Greencastle, Indiana, who's a long-known Bigfoot investigator from Indiana. I have Dr. Russ Jones from West Virginia, noted author, BFRO curator. I have Dr. Kenny Brown from Ohio. Kenny's one of the new young guns in Bigfoot research. He has some incredible audio he's been recording down in the southern tip of the state. And then, of course, I have Doug Waller of the Southern Ohio Sasquatch Bigfoot Investigations, or SOSBI. Doug's been down in Southern Ohio, Southeast Ohio for years, and he's published 4 or 5 books on the Ohio Sasquatch already. So we have a really nice lineup, and I think you're going to enjoy it. And if you need tickets, go to my Facebook page. It's Ohio Bigfoot Conference. But you got to make sure you go to the right one. It's the one with the tie-dye type look on the cover. So there's 2 of them out there. We have an imposter page, unfortunately, but if you need it, shoot me an email at Ohio Bigfoot Conference, all one word, at AOL.com. So Ohio Bigfoot Conference, all one word, at AOL.com, and I can get you the links and the correct information. So, but anyhow, how did I get into Bigfoot? A lot of people want to know. Well, typically, when I was a young kid, I grew up in Westlake, Ohio, and Westlake's on the west side of Cleveland. And my grandparents lived in Rocky River, which was one suburb over. So every Friday we would go hang with my grandparents when I was a kid in the 70s and early 80s. And one day I was over there with my grandpa, and we always watched certain TV shows on TV. And one of them happened to be In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. And obviously, In Search of Leonard Nimoy, legendary show. Well, they just happened to be talking about Sasquatch in British Columbia in North America. And I remember as a little kid going to my grandfather, Grandpa, is there Bigfoot or Sasquatch in Ohio? And he looked at me square in the face and said, yes. He goes, I believe so. He says, I've seen so many newspaper articles, mentioning Bigfoot sightings in Ohio from all over the state, places like Portsmouth, Mansfield, the Akron Canton area, New Philadelphia, Steubenville. We can go on and on. I mean, all over, even outside of Cleveland too. And my grandfather was big at reading newspapers, so he always collected all these little newspaper clippings and stuff. So he showed me a whole bunch of stuff that talked about Bigfoots and all different types of cryptids and things. And so it's something that piqued my interest. So that following Monday, I went to Hilliard Elementary School in Westlake, and I went to the local library, or a library in our school during our library time, and I asked the librarian if they had any books on like Indian legends and myth and folklore, because I was scared to say Bigfoot, Sasquatch. It was an embarrassing word, I guess. So lo and behold, I get taken over to the section, and I see the Loch Ness Monster name, and I figured I was in the right place. And I looked around, and I found this book, a green mylar covered hardbound book called Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us by John Green. And I remember flipping over that book and looking on the back of the cover, and there was the United States, the whole North America continent on the back of the mylar cover. And in Ohio, it said number of sightings, 18. And as soon as I saw that, I picked that book up, checked it out immediately, and immediately had to just read that thing cover to cover. And I learned so much, not just Ohio, but all over, the history, the Patterson-Gimlin film, and everything like that. So I was always totally enthralled with the subject matter. And so as growing up, going through elementary, middle school, high school, my friends all knew I was into Bigfoot, so we just kind of had fun with it. And during the time when like the Legend of Boggy Creek and the Creature from Black Lake and the Sasquatch movie came out, we would go to those midnight movies and go watch those movies at the movie theater and just have a great time. And and lo and behold, something happened when I got out of high school and was going to college and stuff. I met a chick, or a girl. Yeah, there you go. And she invited me to a family reunion. And so it's like, well, where's this at? She goes, oh, Tippecanoe, Ohio. I'm like, Tippecanoe, where the heck is that? And she goes, it's outside of New Philadelphia, Uhrichsville, places like that. And I'm like, I don't have any clue. So we went driving down into this area. And I remember going down 77, past the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and getting into this New Philadelphia area near 250. And we kind of went down 250, went through Midvale, Uhrichsville, all those little communities, and hit State Route 800, made our way all the way down into Tippecanoe. And I remember driving through there thinking to myself, wow, I never knew Ohio had all this forest, all these hills, and just no people. And so it was kind of blew me away. And I remember like that was the day my Bigfoot meter just like right back up on. I was like absolutely starting to think Bigfoot again. And then lo and behold, I meet her aunt and I meet her uncle, and I'm out at the barn with her uncle, and I asked him, I said, hey Bob, I said, any stories of any strange critters or strange animals like being around here? And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, something totally unusual, something out of the ordinary, unknown. And he goes, well, I've heard some stories of panthers and cougars, and the guy down the road swears he saw a bear on 800 and so on. And that was it. I just left it at that. I never brought up the word Bigfoot before. And then when we got to, as they call it down there, supper, his wife Betty goes to me, I heard Bob told you about what the neighbor saw. And I'm like, I looked over like, wow, that didn't last long, the conversation. They obviously talked. And I said, yeah, that's a cool story. She goes, would you like to meet him? I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, he just lives right down the road. So the next morning we got up, and Betty and I drove down the road, down 800, heading south of Tippecanoe. And this guy lived on the right side of the road. And we pulled in, and he was like, did blacksmith work on the side. And he was there in his little blacksmith shop. And she introduced me as her niece's boyfriend. And, she goes, he wants to know about your story about seeing the bear on 800. So he went on and said, I was coming home from the brick plant in down 800 from, I guess it would have been Uhrichsville was where the brick plant was. And when I was coming home at past midnight, I just had passed Bob and Betty's driveway. And he goes, where the road S turns like this, there's a creek that goes underneath it. And he goes, I hit my bright lights, and standing on the left side by the guardrail was this bear standing there. And he goes, it did the most amazing thing. And I go, well, what did it do? He goes, it walked across that road in 3 steps. And when it got to the guardrail on the opposing bank of the creek, it just stepped over it into the creek. And he goes, it never went down. And he goes, I never knew a bear could do that. And I just sat there and said, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Not great story. Thank you so much. He walked me out, and Betty was just waiting in the car. And, he said goodbye. We started backing out. And as we were backing out the driveway, I just sat there and just kind of took it all in, thought about it. And then I could see she was staring at me. And I looked over, I said, yes. And she goes, what do you really think he saw? And I said, what do you think he saw? And she goes, he saw Bigfoot, didn't he? I said, bingo, you said it. And because I did not want to bring that word up at all, because when proper investigation, you never bring the word Bigfoot, Sasquatch up, because you're trying to rule out all other possibilities. And so lo and behold, this guy saw a Bigfoot walk across 800, just assumed it was a bear because he had probably never heard of a Bigfoot. And to this day, he probably still thinks it was a bear that walked across 800. But after that, I became so excited. She goes, hey, there's a guy in Newcomerstown that does meetings and holds events about Bigfoot. You want to go meet him? I'm like, really? Now? She goes, yeah. We literally drove through these little Appalachian foothills from Tippecanoe all the way to Newcomerstown, crossed the Tuscarawas River right in. And we went to the local library, believe it or not, and they had this device outside. It was called a phone booth. It's like a thing where you put money in, you dial numbers. It's kind of cool. And she actually went into the library, got his phone number, came out, and we called him from the phone booth, but he wasn't home. But I left him a message and left her number. Well, later that night, he called me back, and we talked for about an hour, and he's telling me about all these sightings in Ohio, especially down in Guernsey, Coshocton, Tuscarawas, and Muskingum County, which is an area that he referred to as the Sasquatch Triangle, which for the longest time, all the way up to probably the late 90s, early 2000s, that was definitely the hottest place in the state, especially like Coshocton County. Just an amazing amount of reports were coming through. And now that we're like literally 20 years later, I mean, there's a couple other parts in the state, folks, south of Columbus especially, that are becoming the next Sasquatch Triangle and very much could be the new Sasquatch Triangle. And so it's places that public accessible. There's a lot of state forests, state parks down there. And, it's just all knowing who you know and fielding reports. And obviously I'm a curator from the BFRO, or the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. And so I get to field through a lot of reports, good and bad. And there's a lot of reports that come in this state. Does anyone have any questions before we continue on? I know I like to talk, so. Oh, you guys are just amazing. See any. No questions? Are you guys just all starstruck? I guess if I was speaking, I'd be starstruck too, but brought to you by Dunkin' Donut, by the way. So, or Dunkin' Coffee, because I don't eat donuts. But anyhow, well, to continue, what do we got here? Product play. Oh, there you go. You like my product placement. You mean like this? You can get these at Salt Fork State Park, right in the gift shop. Like that. Or, hold on, you can get these COVID masks at googs.com, something like that. But yes, no, I understand. I understand. Yes, all very nice. And folks, if I was there live in the library, I'd have a very big display. And unfortunately, I have everything put away because all my lectures this year, all my in-person lectures have canceled. And I think I had 19 lectures canceled. So my first in-person lecture isn't coming, I think, scheduled till October in Pickerington, I believe. And so yeah, I'm antsy to get back out. Hopefully in the wintertime, this COVID stuff will be gone, and we can start doing a lot more in-person interviews. But now, has anyone who's on here, has anyone had an experience they wish to share? Have they had a sighting? Have they found tracks? Have they heard something that may be a Bigfoot? I'm just curious. I mean, being from Ottawa County, I know it's kind of rural farm country, but it's also very lush. The Ottawa River going through there, and Sandusky Rivers all through there. I mean, so you have a lot of water and a lot of good resources with the lake up north and everything like that. So I've always been curious. And before you ask, yes, we've had a few reports over in Ottawa County. So it's not like there hasn't been any. It's not the hotbed that you're going to get in certain parts of the state, but there's still activity. One thing I would tell you guys to do is this. Get a state of Ohio map, take your finger on Cleveland, and just go right down to Columbus, right down to the edge of Cincinnati, the southeastern edge of Cincinnati. And anywhere east of there is typical habitat where Bigfoots are being seen, even close to people. I saw a question come up. What did that question exactly say?
Sammy says, I haven't had personal experience. I'm from British Columbia. I've heard many stories and spent a lot of time researching this stuff.
So now, Sammy, do you live in BC now, or are you originally from BC living in Ohio? I guess that would be my question, because I was going to say in BC, you should reach out to my good friend John Kirk, who lives in BC, and Winona Alexis Kirk. They're very, very outstanding. Okay, moved to Ohio 7 years. Okay, Cool. Yeah, BC's beautiful. Matter of fact, John Green, the author I was talking about, I became really good friends with John, and I would fly out to Seattle and drive up and stay with the Greens in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia. And the greatest thing with John was, since John was such a well-known Bigfoot researcher, investigator, and everything like that, he would literally let you in his house, put you up, and let you go through his files, his cast collections, all his interviews. I mean, like people talk about the Albert Osmond story of him allegedly being kidnapped at the Toba Inlet in 1924. He had a cassette interview of Osmond. He had interviews of the Ruby Creek incident and all those famous incidents you read about in books. And to hear those people talk about the the incidents, you can see that a lot of the stuff is absolutely legitimate. So yeah, um, no, that's fantastic. But so welcome to Ohio, 7 years in the making, and from BC. And I knew Dr. John Bindernagle really well, and who lived on Vancouver Island, and Renee DeHinden. I knew Renee well, and Renee lived in BC and got to stay in his trailer a couple times. That was always fun, and he was a character, that's for sure. But yeah, that's the one thing with Bigfoot. You're going to learn a lot, meet a lot, but also keep your skepticals on at all times, because everyone wants to make it sound like this thing's just absolutely everywhere. But the reality is, there's people do see them, but not often. And do people get a real good look at them? Not often, because they're too busy paying attention to their devices and just daydreaming or looking in the wrong place. And so yeah, I mean, are they in Ohio? Most definitely they are. It's just finding your location and being true to your location. And being true to your location, because there's one thing that we've learned. I have a whole team that I work with in Ohio. Great people, guys and gals. They're phenomenal. We all have a philosophy that, even if your area is dried up, even if it's for a year, you have to remain somewhat consistent. Keep your recorders out, whatever you're doing, your surveillance, because all it takes is one time. A Bigfoot does make a mistake. And when they do, you want to be there to catch that mistake. That could be one yelling, one doing a wood knock, leaving track lines, stuff like that. That has happened in Ohio. We have documented it. Yeah, I mean, we have some fantastic researchers and investigators in Ohio. I mean, Jim Thompson's over in Eastern Ohio. He's over in the Jewett area of Harrison County. Jim's been doing phenomenal work. Him and Jason Kowalski. Got Dusty Ruth over in Washington Courthouse. Got B. Mills down in the Hocking Hills area. I mean, I could go on and on. And we have the Brown family. The Browns are like Columbus, extreme Southern Ohio, do phenomenal work. I mean, I could go on and on. Charlie Page up in the greater Cleveland area, Akron area, has just been doing amazing work. Of course, Dr. Russ Jones down in Athens and in West Virginia, another one. So, I mean, there's some great investigators. And there's Doug Waller over in the Salt Fork area. I mean, Doug is becoming kind of the scholar of Salt Fork because he lives there. He's in the Cambridge area. So he's probably interviewed now more witnesses in the Salt Fork area than anyone that I know, even Don Keating. And of course, Don Keating, who's been retired. Don's was a great investigator. Ron Schaffner in the Cincinnati area, and we can go on and on. But there are some very good investigators in this state, and kudos to them. And like I say, I just appreciate to have a lot of them on my team. And we work hard. We do a lot of expeditions and things like that through the BFRO that have had a lot of success. So what's this? Okay. What activity has been reported in Ottawa County? Great question. There was actually a sighting near the Ottawa Wildlife Refuge roughly like 5 years ago. It was a nighttime sighting by two cars, and the people were related, but they both did see it. And it was a road crossing sighting, and the one in the back car hit their brights on it and said it was definitely bipedal, definitely swinging long arms, covered an open field very quickly to get into some high, tall reeds in a wet, marshy area. There's a lot of food there during certain times of the year. So anything large that needs high calorie intake is definitely going to take advantage of areas like that. And one great attribute of Sasquatch is the fact that while we like to go night-night, that's when they become most active. So even people leaving out a 50-pound bag of dog food. I had one witness tell me that they had 3 bags of dog food stolen on 3 consecutive nights, and they kept forgetting they were repurchasing it. because they go out and see it was gone. Like, what's going on? Did I forget to get it out of the trunk? And then they think they didn't buy it. And then they go and get another bag. Well, one night he heard his garbage can move. He walks outside, looks down the side of his garage. There's a Bigfoot standing there with a bag of dog food in its hand, and just carried it off, walked into the woods. So, I mean, things do happen. But no, there's been some stories in the Ottawa County. There's been some stories outside of Toledo, believe it or not, going west of there, over near Oak Openings and stuff. And those are kind of older reports, but there have been a few. One thing I would tell you this is, if you're going to look for Bigfoot in those areas, go to the Ottawa River, Sandusky River, Maumee River. Those rivers and the feeders that feed them, those are going to be your best chances, because anything like right now, we've kind of been a little drought. So most of the creeks are dried up, which means all the mammals, or deer and turkey and everything, they have to go to the larger water sources. So if Bigfoots are around and they're preying on the deer, which they definitely are in our state, you need to go to those areas and conduct your research there, because the likelihood of a large mammal that needs fresh water is going to be closer to that big water source. So think of it from that aspect. But anyhow, any other questions for anyone before we continue on? You guys are so exciting. I mean, we should have pom-poms going or something, but you guys are just amazing. How many people do we even have on, out of curiosity?
Let's see.
We don't have. Wow. Five. You guys are the five. You guys are like my favorite five. See that? Fabulous five. So there you go. But to continue on, basically, the Ohio Bigfoot has evolved over the years. And when I say that, what used to just be in the old Sasquatch triangle of Coshocton, Guernsey, and Tuscaroras, that county area, it slowly has moved toward Columbus and down to extreme southern Ohio. Southern Ohio has probably always had a nice population of them, but the biggest problem down there, especially before the internet became popular and things like that, no one had really not a lot of communication, not a way to do it. And you got to drive home. Okay, have a safe drive. But so yes, there's just areas in the state that are so untapped. So my best advice to all of you is to find a good area and just be patient with it, because if you get down south of 70, down especially in that southeast corner of the state, some of the least populated counties, there is some woods down there that, I mean, I was down in Wayne, south of Wayne National Forest, south of Woodsfield about a month ago. Got a flat tire too. Thank God I was already in Woodsfield when it happened. There were some areas I was driving through that, I mean, you did not see people I was probably 30 minutes before I saw anyone at all, even a house. So there's some really remote areas down there to check out and to look into and network. That's the key with Bigfoot. With Bigfoot research, it's all about proper networking. If you can network well, you're going to find out information. You get to know people and talk with people, and so you'd be surprised. But other than that, one thing I will say is this can become a very time-consuming hobby, and you should call it a hobby, even though I'm serious, because when you have a hobby, it's supposed to be fun. So have fun doing it. If you're not having fun doing it, it's probably not something you should get into, because there is a lot of animosity in this field. A lot of people, claiming this and claiming that, and if you don't agree with them, they get very hurt and upset. So, but the best investigator is the most skeptical investigator. So if you stand skeptical on everything, you need to have evidence presented to you that absolutely blow you away before you should believe it. So it's something that you need to do, just so you're honest with yourself and you're doing proper field investigations and stuff like that. Because there are so many sightings out there. Are they real, all of them? No, absolutely not. I could tell you a pretty good story I live over near Lorain County, which is outside of Cleveland, and I got a call one day, a panicked guy over in Grafton, Ohio, claiming he saw a Bigfoot today. Could someone come out? So myself and Dave Bevere, and I think Coyote, who's one of my buddies, we went out right away, met this guy. He takes us way back in the woods off this soybean field. And we get out there, and Coyote's a professional tracker, an expert in the woods. I mean, if the zombies attack, that's who you go hang with, is Coyote. And, he's one of those. He's a rare breed. And so we interviewed the witness. And of course, he goes, well, I saw it way over there. So I started walking away from Coyote and this guy, and I just kept walking. And I got to the point I was like 500 yards away. And even with a monocular, you could barely see them over there. And so I'm calling Coyote on the radio. He goes, am I far enough away? And he goes, I think you're just about there, if that's you. And I mean, so this guy was claiming at like 550 yards that he saw this Bigfoot. And it's like, and he couldn't even see me in a white shirt at that distance. So it's like right away, I knew, obviously he's not telling the truth. Well, what sold me and just absolutely solidified that he was not telling the truth was when we got back together with him. He goes, well, I just want you to say I am on a podcast tonight because I reached out to them too, and I'm going live tonight to tell about my story. And I'm like, really? I don't think you saw a Bigfoot. Oh, I'm going on it. And he went on that podcast and just said that, that he saw this, blah, blah. He never mentioned about the BFRO being out there doing the investigation. And right there, that's attention seeking. And it discredits the whole gang of us that actually go out and do this. And because just remember, this isn't a profession. This is a hobby. This is what we do because we're passionate about it. So take that angle at all this and really be honest with yourself. So everything's not Bigfoot. Most likely it's not Bigfoot. And when you do have something that is Bigfoot, you know what? Success. That's perfect. So always feel free to reach out to the BFRO, our organization. You can just literally just contact them and say, hey, I live in Ohio. I know Marc DeWerth, or I saw him speak, and I'd like to get in contact with him. And like I say, once again, you can reach me at Ohio Bigfoot Conference at AOL.com if you have to get a hold of me. So it'll take a while to respond, but eventually I will. But anyhow, any questions? Ooh, what do we got there? Those who know nothing about Bigfoot, what information is there about him? Ooh, I like how you spelled Bigfoot. Right then and there, I know you know nothing about Bigfoot. Bigfoot is one word, Bigfoot, not big space foot. So that's normal. So no, I understand that. Here's what I would tell you to do. The book Sasquatch the Apes Among Us is like the Bible of Bigfoot. I would definitely read that book. It's an old historical book, but it will help you build a foundation into the existence of Bigfoot. And John was a Columbia-educated journalist that did all these interviews and did all these investigations. So John was absolutely top of the line. I would recommend the Bigfoot Times newsletter done by Daniel Perez out in Norwalk, California. It's actually a paper newsletter that comes in the mail. It comes out every month. It's a fantastic newsletter, chock full of all new information and all data. Lyle Blackburn is an author I would highly recommend. Lyle has a whole slew of different books about the Boggy Creek monsters, Southern Sasquatch, and just cryptids in general. Ken Gerhard's another one. I would look into their books. I would look into Doug Waller's books about Bigfoot in Ohio. Very easy to access Doug's books and get them online. They're not that expensive at all. Goodreads, chock full of Ohio historical sightings. And then, of course, just go to the BFRO website, bfro.net, click on sightings. And when you click on sightings, just simply look at Ohio, click on there, and you will see all the sightings, over 300 of them that have been investigated in Ohio. You can read all the information. They usually have general location, county, near what city, near state routes, things like that. And you can kind of build a picture on what's been going on in Ohio. And then just simple Google searches. I mean, there's a lot of good information out there. Small Town Monsters is another group. They have a lot of good DVDs about the Minerva monster, which was a famous Ohio case, and some of these other, cases of Bigfoot type creatures and stuff like that. Ron Schaffner, if you can find any of Ron's materials, he had a newsletter called Creature Chronicles. If you go on probably eBay, you might be able to find copies of that. There were some fantastic historical reports about Bigfoot in Ohio. And also in terms of Bigfoot itself, what is Bigfoot? Bigfoot is in my opinion, it's a relic hominid. And why I call that, because we're hominids, is because it does something that only we do and nothing else does, and that's walking on two legs. Well, if you took any college classes on anthropology or anything like that, anything that walks in two legs needs a bigger brain to do bipedal locomotion. Well, oh, and of course, yes, I saw that. So they need bipedal locomotion. Well, if you have a bigger brain, you're smarter, you're more intelligent, and that's why in the woods, Sasquatch is, like I say, it's second to none. And I'll tell you a few story references, but I saw someone chatted in about Chad Arment. Chad Arment is down in the Dayton area. He's a fantastic cryptozoologist. He has a historical Bigfoot book. It's on Amazon, and it's so loaded with references in Ohio of Bigfoot incidents, cryptid incidents. It's highly recommended. Thank you, whoever put that out there. That was very nice of you. But anyhow, getting back to Bigfoot and its stealthiness, I remember a guy reaching out to me from an area called Alledonia, Ohio, which I believe is in Jefferson County. That'd be east central Ohio, just about. And he told me, he says, I see you're from the Cleveland area. He goes, I originally worked at the Avon Lake Fort Econoline truck plant. And he goes, I retired there. My wife and I are avid bow hunters. And we had a cabin built down in Alledonia. We had about 55 acres down there along a big ridge. And he says, we had a really strange incident happen. And I said, well, tell me about it. And he goes, this is during the winter too, so it was very cold out at night. He goes, we were hearing this pounding on the side of our log cabin, and it was a very nice cabin, and his wife and him both just concluded it was the bucks in rut, and they were rubbing against the side of the cabin. Well, the next morning, his wife comes in after she went out to get wood. She comes in and says, honey, you better come out here and take a look at this on the side of the house. So on the side of the house where the pounding was taking place, there were footprints. And these footprints were roughly about 13 inches long, 5-toed. They were in the soft dirt because it wasn't snowy. It was just kind of wet. And so he followed them. He followed these footprints, and they went back to the back corner of his property. And he had a smokehouse back there where he would hang meat and smoke it. Well, when he got back there, the door of the smokehouse was laying on the ground, and it was totally cleaned out. And he was really upset. And, he looks and follows these tracks right to there. And then when he goes to the side of the smokehouse, there's 2 more sets of tracks, like 16 inches and 15 inches that were waiting. So apparently the 13-incher came up, checked out the house, came back on, they broke into the smokehouse, took what they needed, and they ended up going up the big hill on the backside of the property. Well, he was really mad, really upset. And he goes, well, just to tell a little story about himself, he goes, I was a point man in Vietnam, 3 tours. So I was very familiar with tracking, very, very familiar for detecting people. So I guess he went in and got his most powerful gun, probably a machine gun, knowing this guy. And he went storming up the hill, following these tracks up this ridge line. He goes, I finally get up way up on top of the ridge where I could start looking down and seeing the valley below where my cabin is. And he goes, the weirdest thing is, he goes, I could start hearing movement in front of me, almost like whatever I was tracking, I was onto it. And he goes, I keep going, and I could hear some light footfalls in the distance. And he said, all of a sudden, I got the feeling of being what he called checkmate. He goes, my hair stood up on my body, every hair. He says it was just like being in Nam when you knew you had a sniper scope right on you, an X on you. And he goes, I backed off a little bit, tried to do a double back move. And he said, when I did my double back move, by the time I did a double back move, he says, whatever it was counteracted with even a better move. He said he did it 3 times in consecutive, and every time it did a better move to obviously avoid any confrontation with him. And he said, finally, he goes, I get to a point where once again, my hair just starts standing up. And he goes, I just literally took my gun, pulled the clip out, and said, whatever the heck you are, leave my property alone. And he goes, I'm going to walk out of here in peace. And he turned around and walked out of there. Well, he said on his way out, he happened to look to the left, and he looked down in the distance. He says there was a perfect vantage point from up on that ridge, seeing the cabin. He says, so anything could have been standing up there and just looking down and watching them, their actions, what they're doing all the time. So it really kind of scared them. But they did cast the tracks, and they were pretty interesting track casts. And But here's a guy that was a point man in Vietnam that said there's nothing I could have done to counteract what this thing was doing. And that's why he kind of came up with the term. It was like being a ninja in the woods. There was just nothing he could do to see this thing, even though he knew it was there. And that's what was the cool thing. He knew it was there. He could hear it. And he said, but he says, I know this thing could see me, that's for sure, but I couldn't see it. But so it was really interesting. So any other questions or comments before we continue on? I know I'm boring you guys, so I'm very good at boring people. So anything? Okay. Oh. Forwarding to all, never. Okay. Forwarding to all, I don't know. I didn't get that one, but oh, okay. So anyhow, so over the years, I mean, basically, I was very active with Don Keating beginning in the early 90s, doing investigations with Don all over Coshocton, Guernsey, Tuscarawas County, and little surrounding counties. And we had a heck of a lot of stuff happen, especially over down in the Woodbury Wildlife area in Coshocton County off of County Road 5, County Road 70, County Road 6, 541 area. No, they're not coming for me, trust me. And but we had a lot of things going on there. I mean, that was probably the first time I ever heard wood knocks in a Bigfoot yell. And I'll tell you what, when I heard those first wood knocks, I mean, I could not believe it, because we did a wood knocks, it responded. We did 2 more, it's responded, and it was like plain as day what it was. I mean, it was something physically hitting, you know, a tree, responding to what we were doing. And then when I finally heard my first, what they call Ohio howl, that blew you away. It was so loud, so deep, it just literally reverberated through your body. Your hair stands straight up. And if you don't have something to hold on to, your legs turn to like jello, like a boxer that gets knocked out. And that was a hair-raising experience. And we had a good run going up to the late 90s of, I mean, track finds, multiple sightings, including a county sheriff seeing one, like 11-foot tall one, silver white in color. Saw the spotlight, hit the spotlight on it. It walked into a stop sign and knocked it over. And so some hair-raising, you know, experiences and things like that. And got to meet a lot of great people down there, that's for sure. And then, of course, Don was doing the annual Bigfoot conference, which, you know, we started, you know, when I started getting involved, it maybe was 50 people. The first one, I got, so here, this is a good story. First Bigfoot conference I ever went to. So it was probably 94. And I remember seeing in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, my girlfriend says, hey, it says Bigfoot conference, Newcomers Town. You want to go today? We can go stay at my aunt's. I'm like, yeah, cool, let's go. So it's like, well, how would you dress to a Bigfoot conference? That was like the thing I was thinking about. So, so here's me. I mean, back when I was young too. I mean, you know, back in the day, I was not, you know, pretty dashing at one time. So, so I like wore like I literally a collar shirt, like a sweater vest, slacks, dressed up real nice. My girlfriend had a dress on, and we were looking all snazzy and stuff. So here we go to Newcomers Town, 624 Heller Drive. Drive down this road. It's like, what the heck? These are all houses. And right down on the road, there was a place called April's Country Kitchen, and the little Union Hall where the conference was right next to it. So we pull into this gravel driveway. There's cars in the lot. Like, well, let's walk in. We walk up these steps, and then when I talk steps, these are the steps that are hollow in between. So when you're looking down, there was like a pit down below. Like if you slipped and fell, you just fall forever and never come back. And we get into this old beat up Union Hall, walk down this little short hallway and make the right to get in. And I remember walking in, my girlfriend and I walk in, and these people turned. There's probably 40 people, turned and looked at us, and I just saw their jaws drop. And I thought I was in the movie Deliverance. It was so funny. And I just like, and then Don Keating goes, are you Marc DeWerth? And I said, yeah. Hey, how you doing? And once he said that, all the people that looked like they wanted to eat me didn't want to eat me anymore. And so we sat in the corner of the room, and we just sat there and listened. And all these people from Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, telling stories about seeing Bigfoots in their state. And after that, I told Don, I said, Don Keating, I said, hey, if you need anyone to help, I got a Jeep, I got all sorts of gear, you know, I'd be glad to help. And so the rest was history. And so after that, I mean, it was a fun time. It was a really fun time. I learned a lot. Got to see the good and bad of Bigfoot. I mean, the good is finding legitimate evidence or hearing legitimate evidence. The bad is the hoaxing, which there's lots of hoaxing. So once again, keep your skepticals on. So it's just one of those things where, it's make it a hobby, have fun, enjoy yourself, ask questions. And, if anything, it gives you a good excuse to get out in nature, get out in the woods and hike. I would tell you people in Ottawa County, you hit your nice nature preserves down there and hike those regularly and just look around, look where the water sources come. And don't forget, in the wintertime is your best time to lay out your land, because when all the foliage is gone and the understory is gone, you can see the game trails, where they go and how they correlate all around with everything. Well, if you're a Bigfoot, where would you sit waiting for a deer or waiting for a turkey? You got to think that way. So, and the water's, of course, super important. The fresher the water, fresh spring, even better. Because remember, with fresh springs, even in the summer when all the regular creek beds dry up, if it's a spring-fed creek, it's going to keep flowing, which means there's fresh water. Everything's going to be going there. So the Bigfoots are going to go there to watch go after deer and other animals. So, any questions, comments? Please. Oh, what's this? Have you had any personal sightings or only audible encounters? Oh, personal sightings. Yes, I have. After 96, I was getting very frustrated, with what was going on in Bigfoot, because I had spent a lot of time and a lot of money looking into Bigfoot. But the biggest problem was, back then we didn't have, internet wasn't big, and a lot of people weren't on it. There wasn't an easy way to field reports. So by the time you get a report, it'd be 3 months old. So when you get to the scene and investigate it and interview the witnesses, and the report could sound incredible, but if there's no physical evidence there, it's real hard for someone who is skeptical like me to sit there and say, well, yeah, it was Bigfoot. I'd like to, but I'd still like to see more. So it was getting frustrating driving 120 miles each way, spending my weekends down in the middle of August, tick infested, sweating my off, and it was just one of those things. So I remember thinking about getting out of it, and I recall the last day of gun season in '96. This dude was in the 541 beverage store in Coshocton County, and I had put one of my Bigfoot cards up on the bulletin board, and trying to be real sneaky about it, and lo and behold, this guy comes over. Hey, I saw you put your card up. He goes, do you guys into anything other than Bigfoots, like anything other strange? I said, well, yeah, cougars, bears, shit like that. Excuse me, stuff like that. Sorry. Oh, wow. And he goes, well, what about badgers? And I'm like, yeah, badgers. Yeah, that's cool. And he told me where him and his fishing buddy, I think it was, saw 2 badgers by an old coal pile over near Wills Creek, which I wasn't too familiar with the area. So he had wrote down where it was, County Road 410, and how to get there, and how you'd see where his trail was to get back to the coal pile. So I just wrote it down on a little piece of paper, put it in the center console of the Jeep, didn't think anything of it. Well, the next spring was a real wet spring in '97 in Ohio. And I remember how wet it was in March and early April, and there was really no good squatching weather. Everything was flooded. Everything was a mud pit. You get stuck anywhere you went. It was frustrating. And then finally, like on April 20th, which was a Sunday, a group of us met down at Woodbury Wildlife Area. We hiked around. It was like that first nice spring day where it wasn't actually all mud and everything. And we hiked around and checked out some locations. And then it's like, well, we could just call it the day. I'll go back home. And then my one buddy says, well, I'm going to go down to Wills Creek. There was a bald eagle's nest down there that I heard about. I'd like to go photograph it. And I said, oh, I remember that guy about the badgers. I said, I have the info right here. We could do that too. So we went down there, and sure as heck, the guy gave me the directions down 410, and right where he said his big rut line was from his Jeep, there it was. And we hiked all the way back there, all the way back to the coal pile, probably a mile and a half back. Beautiful area, very secluded. Saw the dens, didn't see badgers, but it was still cool. And then my one buddy says, hey, I'm going to go back to my vehicle and go over to the bald eagle's nest, which was on the other side of Wills Creek. And so me and the other guy were just hanging there talking. And when my buddy got down to the car, maybe 30 minutes later, he calls us on the radio. We had these 2-way Motorola radios, and he says, hey, I'm at the car, I'm driving away. And he did. You could hear him reverberation of his car going down the dirt road in the distance. It came right down the holler we were in. And then we started hiking out, and I even said to my friend, I said, hey, why don't we just go down the center trail, because since it's a strip mine, it's tiered like this. It's in steps. So we came down the low one to get it way back to the coal pile. On the way out, we just said, well, we're at this level. Why don't we just stay the flat level and go straight out? It'll drop down to the road eventually when we get there. So we did that, and we started hiking. And as we hiked, within a few minutes of just leaving, we started hearing above us, on the tier above us, a bunch of heavy movement up there. Well, so you think Ohio, Coshocton County, it's deer. We just kept going. A few minutes later, whole bunch of more movement above us, looking up, can't see anything, and so on. So this went on, it seemed like 20 minutes. We just kept going. We'd go, it would move, we'd stop, it would stop, whatever was moving around up there. So finally I said to my buddy, I said, hey, why don't you just take a head start? I'll give you, 5-10 minutes, whatever. And maybe if we split up, the deer will get all spooked and one of us will see it. So he says, okay. So he started going, and I sat there and just waited, real quiet, very nice spring day, sunny, birds were chirping, everything was happy. And so I said, okay, I think I'm going to get up and go. And I literally just take like 10 steps, crunch, crunch, crunch up above me. And so I'm looking up thinking, what the heck? So I would go, it would stop, and back and forth. So I was getting concerned, and it wasn't because I thought it was a Bigfoot. I just thought it was, if you think about it, folks, we all have them at home. What likes to play stalking? Cats. I thought it was a cougar, because the way I would go, it would go, I would stop, it would stop. So it was like playing cat and mouse. So I was very concerned at the time because I didn't have a gun. Only thing I had was a can of bear mace, so I got that out. So the whole time I'm hiking, and when I'd hear it moving, I would stop and turn and look, and it would stop, and I couldn't see anything. So I'd have that mace ready, and we continued on this little journey here. It seemed forever. I finally got to the point where in the distance, I could see the dirt road. And the only reason I could see it was because my Jeep had those big circular headlights on top of the light bar on top. And I could see the top of the Jeep way in the distance. And as that happened, all the trails started going decline down to flatten out to get to the dirt road. And it was probably, 400 or 500 yards away at the time. And so I thought to myself, as I'm hearing this thing above me on the next tier of the strip mine up, I'm thinking to myself, if it's a cat and I run, it's coming. So as I started going down the decline, I just made this decision to sit on my rear end right on the tier of the strip mine, because there were some pines growing on this side, and I sat there and listened. And it seemed like, 4 or 5 minutes went by, nothing, didn't hear anything. I was absolutely surprised. It's like, wow, now I don't hear anything. Wow, the whole time it was going on. So I was just getting ready to stand up to look over the tops of the pines up on this direction. And that's when I heard crunch, crunch, crunch. It literally went over the top of me. And I was like, oh my God. And I thought to myself, that's not a cat. It must be a person. Because you have to understand, in that part of Ohio, they have cash crops. And they grow in those foothills, and hidden down those little hollers, they're little cash crops. So I had encounters in the past of being escorted out of the woods with people with shotguns and stuff to stay away from their crops. And so I thought to myself, oh, don't tell me it's one of these guys with a gun again. So I slowly looked up over the top of the pines, and I didn't see anything. And I was like, what? I just heard it. So I looked down back toward where my vehicle was. I look up the tier I came down, and as I panned back this way and looked up at an angle, maybe about 75 feet away, there was this black object squatted down. The sunlight was right on it, and it looked to be looking toward the dirt road. And I'm looking at it like, wow, a black bear. That's awesome. So I take my full pack off to get my camera out. And when I did that, it made a whole bunch of noise because of this tight strap on top. And lo and behold, this thing goes from compact and starts standing up. And when it does, I'm expecting to see this and this. I see this head and the shoulders turn. And when it does, I see the ear here because the sun was hitting it, and the flat face. I mean, the head sat like this, and it was super flat. You couldn't even see the nose. It was that flat. And it turned and looked at me. And when it did, it just goes. And when it did that, I almost I went back, and there's a tier behind me of the strip mine. I almost fell right backwards over it, down like another 15 feet down. And I balanced myself, had my bag in front of me. And when I did, I went to reach in for my camera. As soon as I made that move or to reach, it literally turned, walked right up the next tier. Its head hit off a branch of a tree, and it went up over onto a plateau. And I don't know why I did this. In just sheer excitement, I grabbed a camcorder out of my drag my bag with me, go up to where it was standing, drop my bag, go up to the plateau, and I'm filming. And here the whole time my arms going like this. And I'm trying to film something going away from me in the distance. And the only reason I knew where it was going is the trees were all moving in the distance it was moving. And I was so excited, but yet so scared. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a brand new camcorder. I really didn't know how to use it. So I was fumbling with that. I mean, total buffoon, embarrassing, just unacceptable. That was like the perfect opportunity I had to film one. And believe me, it was that close, that clear, that it would have blown the Patterson-Gimlin film from October 20th, 1967 away. And so it was something that was like, wow, it was right there for the taking, and I totally blew it. So saddening. But anyhow, I get up on the tier and I'm filming in the direction where this thing was moving, but you couldn't see it because it was so far away. You could just see the trees moving. And remember, my friend had gone all the way down to the Jeep. He's waiting for me. So I'm sitting there freaking out over this incident. And all of a sudden in my head, I hear my name being called. I'm like, huh? I keep hearing Marc. And all of a sudden I said, oh, I'm up here. I yelled down, I'm up here. And he comes up and he walks up and he goes, dude, he goes, would you just see a ghost? I was like, Bigfoot. What? He's like, what? Where? And then, the whole 9 yards. Well, while we were standing there up to this side, the strip mine turned like this, contoured. Something just started like a freight train toward me. And I'm pointing like, there's something right up there. There's something right up there. And it was insane. And all I can say is after that day and seeing that creature, and remember I told you it hit its head off a branch. Well, he goes, what do you want to do? He could tell I was in shock. I said, I want to go home. And I literally packed up my vehicle. We had separate cars and drove the 125 miles home like a vegetable. I don't remember the drive. I just remember replaying everything in my mind. It was that, I was scared to death. And I don't know why I was scared, but I was. And it was just one of those things that after seeing it, then I came to the understanding that, hey, this person and that person, these people might actually be telling the truth. So there was some substance into this. And because of that day on October 20th, 1997, I'm still here to this day because I know they're in Ohio. I know they exist. And that's for you guys to find out on your own. Don't believe it because of me. Believe it because of what you do, and that should instill you to get out and search and seek and look. And that's what's the most important thing. You have to go out and find your own evidence, and of course be super skeptical in the same breath, because if you're not skeptical with yourself, you're not being honest with yourself. So please be that way. Any questions? I know there was maybe a few things that came across. Great story. Thank you for sharing. Oh, okay, Zammy. I like that name, Zammy. But that changed my life, and and then I took over the Ohio Bigfoot Conference maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And once I took it over, I just envisioned Salt Fork being this Bigfoot mega house. And you know what? And here's the real truth about it. The reason why I like doing the conference is because it brings people like us together on a platform where you don't have to worry about being made fun of, especially if you're sensitive. Me, I'm not sensitive at all. I mean, you can make fun of me all you want. Whatever. What am I going to lose sleep over it? No, not at all. I sleep well over that. So, but I will say this, you will meet some incredible people with like interests. And not everyone's a believer. You shouldn't be a believer. Unless you've seen something or someone that you fully trust that has seen one, then you can sit there and get in that believer wagon. But it's an incredible event, and it's sad that COVID's happening this year and that all these great programs that we do can't happen, as usually planned. But, things will get better, folks, trust me. And then, still that shouldn't stop you from getting out in the woods. If you go out in remote areas, you won't see any people anywhere. Just make sure you have your masks. If you do go in any places, with population and things like that, or in stores, and, just play it safe, wash your hands. That's very important. But anyhow, any other questions and things like that? I'm hoping someone throw me a bone, please, because I'm sure there's so many people on this Zoom chat right now. I mean, they just can't control yourself. You guys are all fighting the message simultaneously. So, interesting. So anyhow, now as we go forward into Ohio, one thing I can say is that one thing that my team, we've been working very hard in the state for a while now, and we've come to a conclusion that in terms of like family groups, the population has definitely gone up on these because there seems to be some separation between groups in certain areas that weren't there before, say in the last 15 or 20 years. And so we're definitely seeing an increase and activity throughout the state. I would tell you some of the best areas in the state. Obviously, Salt Fork is one of them, Coshocton County, Woodbury. And then you get down into the Columbus area, Hocking Hills, Pike State Forest. I mean, you could Zaleski, you can go all the way down to, Shawnee State Forest is a hotbed. It's huge down there. The Adams County slope, especially. Wayne National in the southeast, south out of Woodsfield. There's not a lot of people down there doing anything. Just remember, water is the key. Where you have rivers, streams, constant water going, big bodies of water, like Eastern Ohio, you have all those Finger Lakes. You have, Atwood, you have Tappan, you have Salt Fork, you have Seneca Lake, Piedmont Lake, Charles Mills. I mean, we can go on and on, all the different lakes that are down there, Belmont Lake. And to have all those Finger Lakes providing water is just providing food source, and food's the key. So my best recommendation is to find your spot and just stay true. That's all you can do. But here we go. Based on your research, do you feel that there are different types of Sasquatch tribes? I will say this. Think about this and think very well. You and I, he and she, all of us, we all look different. So does that mean it's a different tribe? Absolutely. I mean, there's different groups where you have an alpha male, his females in family. Of course you have that. But in terms of different species, no. It would be basically what had happened for the longest time. There was so much deforestation east of the Mississippi, you had genetic isolation. So when you have isolation, things are forced to reproduce in ways they normally don't reproduce, and probably that's brother, sister, whatever, father, sister, whatever, because to enable to live. And then as the forest has come back, I mean, like, you guys probably don't know this, but there's more forests in Ohio now than there ever was in the late 1800s. I mean, there were no deer in the state up to the 50s or 60s. So it's been drastically improved. And with the help of all the different nature preserves, private landowners that leave their forested lands into trust so they can never be developed, and of course our state and national forests, our forest cover has increased significantly, and it's at the highest level it's been in probably 150, 175 years. So yes, that enabled the Bigfoots or the Sasquatches to spread out more and have young males wander off, meet young females, and form their own little clans. And believe me, folks, the big ones are the big dominant alpha. You don't want to mess with him. Those things are huge, and you'll laugh, 10, 11 foot. That's within question. You're talking something 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 pounds. Now, you're going to think, well, how can something like that be running around? Trust me, if you see one of those or it roars at you, you're not going to be running after it. You're going to be running the other way. So, in terms of separate clans, I don't think so. I think if anything, you're having creatures that are coming in from different states, coming across the river, coming in from Indiana, PA, Michigan, all over, and they're meeting different individuals and they're improving the bloodline. And so you're getting larger, groups that are usually isolated by certain things. And those are usually river valleys, highways, big state routes, and forest areas. I mean, so, you got to look at it that way. I would say in Ohio, we have a small group in northeast corner, like Ashtabula, Lake, Trumbull County. You have a group over in what I would call like the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and going south into Canton area. And it's probably a small group too, going all the way east to say Columbia, then in that Columbiana County area, all through there, there's a group. And then of course, Salt Fork has a group, Coshocton has a group. And then you cross 70, and I'm going to say you have a small group over in Wayne National, over south of Woodsfield. And then you're going to get into the Hocking region. There's probably a group over there. Shawnee region, there's a group, and then go towards Cincinnati, there's probably a group too. So there's possibility. There's a good amount of them in the state now. And one thing that I know this is we're not just getting sightings of individuals. We've had sightings. I know, like B. Mills and I, we've had a couple investigations where we had sightings of 4 individuals at once, 2 adults and 2 kids, all at once and multiple times, all within a couple year period. So they're definitely reproducing. So yes, no separate species, one species, but we all look alike. Some are handsome, some are ugly, some are super big, some are medium sized. It just depends. It's just like people. We all come in different, shapes, races, colors, whatever you want to call. But in the end, we're all the same. So, anything else? Any other questions? Let's see what time we have here. It's 6:37. Wow. How about a drink of coffee, maybe? Once again, sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. I love Dunkin' coffee, but I don't eat donuts. Anything? Okay, well, audio. Let's talk about that. Now, what do we got here? Some people claim they are omnivores, other carnivores, and it sounds like there is evidence of them. Okay, well, they're definitely omnivores, Sammy. They're eating everything. In Northeast Ohio, like up in Geneva, Ashtabula County, they've been raiding the apple orchards, the grape orchards. So they're eating everything. Something this big has a huge calorie intake. And if you think about Ohio, what is something it drastically lacks, say, compared to the Pacific Northwest? Natural predators. It's not like we have wolf populations of mountain lions running around impacting deer population. So for a deer hunter out there, Ohio is a fabulous state because our deer are massive, huge racks, the whole 9 yards. So they're fantastic. So when you have that much meat, a Bigfoot takes total advantage of all this. And they become the alpha predator when it comes to hunting the deer. So yes, deer are big on their menu, but believe me, they have to eat so much vegetable matter. And they've been seen eating wild onions. They've been seen eating apples and grapes and off vineyards and, in orchards and stuff. So they're taking advantage of everything they can, including what we throw in the garbage. So there's plenty of sightings by dumpsters of Bigfoot's dumpster diving all across the country. So just like anything else, they want McDonald's too, which I don't know why, or they like pizza. So there you go. But so no, that was a good question, and things like that. But in terms of them being violent toward people, no, unless you shoot them. If you shoot at one, of course they're going to defend, and you probably don't want to get caught by one if it's mad at you or you wound it, because if you think about it, an 8 to 10 foot tall, massive creature with, that you think how strong like gorillas are or chimps are, they can rip your arms and legs out of your sockets instantly, and I don't think you want that. So, and plus, when you see something that bad coming at you, you're running like heck. So, anyhow, but back to audio. One thing that our team has done in the BFRO is we really concentrated on a very, very professional oriented and ran audio project throughout the state. And what we do is we set up long duration recorders, or LDRs, throughout the state of Ohio in areas that have had historical sightings or our main research areas. And we let the recorders, starting at dusk to dawn, pick up any sounds that are coming around in the area. And believe it or not, over the last 4 or 5 years, Ohio has accumulated more audio recordings than anywhere in the country that have been, definitely analyzed by linguistic people, saying that if this is not a Bigfoot, I don't know what it is. I mean, we have so much audio on file between the Brown family, B. Mills, Charlie Page, and some of the other people. I mean, Dusty Ruth, some fantastic audio coming out of the state. And, you got to reach out and clap your hands for them because of the hard work and dedication that they put into all that. And they've done fantastic work. I mean, I can't be more happier. And it's something that me by myself would never be able to accomplish. And we try to, have a teamwork, work as a team, and that's super important. Line yourself up with good people, and put everyone as an equal. That's probably something that you should do. So yes, Ohio has some amazing audio recordings. If you if you come to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference and you do happen to have a ticket to the event, you're going to get to hear some of it, some really good audio, and I think you'll be impressed. Yeah, and then of course other things like footprints. Yes, we've had plenty of track casts that have come back legit, some come back hoax, but we've definitely been working that angle too. So Ohio has plenty of stuff going on. I would check the BFRO website for the most updated sightings that come in all the time. I know there was one at Salt Fork just in the last few months, and that's one that's going to be published soon. It's just, the witness had to be interviewed at the site and things like that, and Jim Thompson's been working it, so that's going to be really good. And yeah, fantastic. Any other questions, comments? Oh, here we go. I have seen professional linguists and also Butterfly showing a vocal range. Yes, the vocal range is very unique. It really falls in a certain frequency pattern. There's a certain hertz that it falls in when you put it on the spectrograph, and it's very unmistakable what it is compared to, say, dogs, cats, bears, anything like that. It's something that's very, very unique, and it has to hit in a very certain spot, and we have a lot of it in the state of Ohio that meets the criteria. Probably the best Ohio howl I've ever heard was, on one of the properties that and locations that we've been researching that B. Mills was spearheading, and I mean, just fantastic. And the cool thing is, not only did we hear it on the recorder, we heard it in person. And when you hear it in person and you feel it, I mean, when I say feel it, it's like the deepest bass coming through your body. And you won't believe it. You just won't believe it. So I pray and I hope for all of you that you do luckily have an experience. That's why, folks, you have a cell phone. It usually has a recorder, like even a video recorder. If something's going on in the woods, even if you just hit your video function and press record, it'll pick the audio up too. And this way you can capture the audio, because nothing's more frustrating is when someone says, well, I heard that same sound and I didn't record it. Did you have your phone on? Well, of course I did. And well, you could record on your phone. So record that and then save the clip and then send it to us, and we will have it analyzed and let you know what it is and what it isn't. So it's really, really simple and to the point. Okay, well, how about some questions? Fire away, folks. Come on. Don't be afraid. You want to know what each ring is? I can tell you. What's my preferred? I like, in terms of recorders, I like the Olympus DM620. Microphones, I like Charlie Page's homemade microphones that you can pick up from Charlie Page. Cameras, anything high definition, 4K, 1080p. Sony makes a lot of nice ones that are real handy to use. Cameras, your cell phones are really good tools, but they don't have the greatest lenses for anything moving. So if you're really serious about photographing one, you got to have a real good camera with a real good lens, something like a birder would use. That would only get you something that someone wouldn't criticize and say it's Photoshop and stuff like that. So come on, folks, throw some questions my way, please. The Ohio Bigfoot Conference is August 15th, Salt Fork State Park Lodge. The vending area is free to the public to walk through. Just like I say, wear masks, proper social distancing. That's the key. Oh, I'm trying to think of more questions, but I'm running out. Oh, come on, Zammy. Please. Let me say this. Okay. My favorite things of Bigfoot. My favorite things of Bigfoot is being able to say that I met and knew John Green, Renee DeHinden, Dr. Grover Cranston, Peter Byrne, and the late Dr. John Bindernagel. I was able to spend time out west and meet them and hang with them, and sometimes invite them to Ohio and hang with them, and became friends with them. Those are special times because those are big names in the field. Obviously, I'm good friends. I've been good friends with Cliff and Bobo from Finding Bigfoot for years. They're just awesome dudes, great people. Just love those guys to death. And then just all the unique people I've met. One of the greatest people I can think of Bigfoot is the head of Squatchachusetts in Massachusetts. That's John Wilk. John is like the most generous man ever, and just a great Bigfoot investigator. And he's really kind of opened up people's eyes about the Bigfoots that are in the Massachusetts area. They have a lot of stuff going on. Caroline Curtis of the BFRO, she's kind of like the administrator for the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. Caroline doesn't get enough credit due to all the things that she does to make the BFRO run. Fantastic woman, great friend, just fantastic. And then, of course, being able to meet all the original Bigfoot investigators in Ohio, and then my wonderful team, that I've been working with, between, Dusty and Jim and the Browns and B Mills and, Dave Bevere, Charlie Page, and they're just fantastic people. Even Suzanne Ferenchek, I can go on and on. They're people that I really respect and care. I did see something come over. What did that say again? I think it was from B.
It says, what are your thoughts on Cliff and Bobo's podcast?
Oh, I think the Cliff and Bobo podcast, if you guys don't know it, Cliff and Bobo have a podcast. It is fantastic. They interview the best investigators, the best witnesses, the best people in Bigfoot. Fantastic show. Lot of high quality material. And, Cliff has a museum in Boring, Oregon, outside of Portland, called the North American Bigfoot Center. If you guys get out there, hey, Troy, great to see you, buddy. Nice to see you. Get out there in the fields, man. Find me a tree too. But no, his museum in Portland is fantastic, and it's called the North American Bigfoot Center. You can go online. They have a website, and I think they have an online store. They have some fantastic stuff. His wife Melissa is an incredible artist, and just great. And of course, Bob's. Everyone loves Bobo. Bobo's awesome. Just a great dude. If you really got to know him, he's actually a really shy guy, believe it or not. So, he's not great around crowds. It's taken him a long time to get used to it, but great people. But the Cliff and Bobo podcast is fantastic. Oh yes, there's a page out there. It's called Bigfoot Trivia. It's a new page, and it's basically all the new and old historic Bigfoot trivia in questions where you can take the quiz and and kind of educate yourself on Bigfoot. Because here's the biggest problem that we've ran into. A lot of people that are into Bigfoot now don't know the true history. They don't look back on the old books and all the old material. All that stuff, John Green, Renee DeHinden, Peter Byrne, Grover Krantz, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, all that stuff is so important to give you the foundation and lay the groundwork for what you're doing today. So you should definitely look into all that. And Bigfoot Trivia has so many questions and answers of some of the most famous things that happen in Bigfoot, some of the famous names and things like that. I think that was B that did that. B, if you could put up the link to the website, if you could, that'd be great for the followers. You should definitely try to do the Bigfoot Trivia Challenge. It's fantastic. So yes, she said she did. Thanks, B. And so all in all, I appreciate you guys all, taking the time. If you have more questions, we can continue going on. And it's just I'm used to talking in front of crowds. On Albert Osmond, John, when he was alive, I heard the original cassette recording of Albert. And I heard it sounded very, very legitimate, and it stayed pretty consistent for the longest time until he got older. And then the story started swaying a little bit. And then I know John Kirk of BC has been really digging deep into the Osmond story, and he found some very searching inconsistencies in it about like where he came out after being kidnapped, how the story changed and things like that. So could that lead to some inconsistencies? Possibly, or it could be an old man just forgetting, but it's hard to say. But the Osmond story is always something that fascinated me. And for people that don't know the Osmond story from 1924, he claimed to be kidnapped in his sleeping bag by a family of Sasquatches and carried miles and miles into the wilderness, into a kind of a ravine surrounded place where a family of Bigfoots lived. And he was held there for like 3 days until he finally gave them chewing tobacco, got them all sick, and was able to get out of there. And he supposedly came out someplace at some logging camp or something. But no, it's a great story. It's something you should definitely look up and read. And, it's like, I'm doing this lecture for a library. Well, libraries, we read. So get out your books and your books are going to tell you everything. Check out your books about those stories and you will see. And that would be the best thing I could tell you to do. But the Osmond story has always been fascinating, and just kind of like the Patterson Gimlin film. I've been to the site 3 times in Bluff Creek, California, and the most recent was in 2017. And when I first went there, I think it was 9 miles hiking one way in, 9 miles out. The second time, I got it down to maybe, I don't know, was it 5 miles one way, 5 miles out? And then finally, they had the forest road. There's a access service road that gets it within like a mile. So the last time a whole group of us went, it was great because it was only a mile in, mile out. But that film site is absolutely documented. It looks totally different than what you see on the film, but it's a piece of history that's always going to live on. And I know Bob Gimlin very well, and Bob is the most honest, sincere man on the planet. And there's absolutely no doubt what happened that day and what him and Roger saw that day and what Roger filmed. So you got to look at it from that way. And the Bigfoot that I did see kind of looked like the Patterson film, other than it wasn't a female, it was a male, and it was different color. Mine was very jet black, where the Patty creature appears to be brownish or an auburn color. So matter of fact, look at Sibylla Irwin art right there. So yeah, it's definitely some things from a historical standpoint you need to look into. Another thing I like is the Bossberg track line, the Crippled Bigfoot. That's a really interesting story. It's something you should read up on. In terms of Ohio, 1984 in Noble County, the report of the lady and her kids playing near the fairgrounds. They were just playing on the little circle ride, and she was sitting there on the picnic bench and watching her little kids play. And then she said she heard something in the woods coming down the fence line. Well, knowing that there was a cow farm the next property over, she just assumed a cow got loose in the woods. And she was sitting there not paying much attention, but kept looking up at her kids playing on a little rounded thing. She says she notices at the fence line behind the little, roundabout thing, this creature standing there on the other side of the fence staring at her kids. Well, she goes, I get up around the picnic table, start walking toward my kids. And she says the thing's staring down at her kids with its arm up holding a branch of a tree, and it's looking down smiling at them. And so her one daughter happened to look over and notice the creature and come running over as the mom's staring at it and tugging mom on the shirt. Mommy, mommy, mommy. She goes, I look down at my daughter. My daughter says, is that a Bigfoot? And she's like, I think so. And she's like, kids, come on. And they panicked and started, running back past toward their vehicle back behind the picnic table. And when she turned around, it was just slowly started moving down the line. And then when she got in the car and turned again, it was gone out of sight. So that's a pretty famous Ohio sighting report. There's a lot of great reports. I would go on the BFRO website or get one of Doug Waller's books to read all the historical sightings, new and old. And I think it would be a big benefit for all of you. So anything else from anyone? Ooh, have you had the privilege of speaking with better than the tribal flag? Okay, in terms of naval elders in Ohio, there's an old chief down in the Plainfield, Kim Bolton area. It's on an Indian Camp Run Road. They still have our Native American lands there. And he has told me multiple times, and I know a couple people that I do work with have interviewed him too, that, they're down there on Indian Camp Run Road off of 658 and down in the Coshocton, Guernsey County area, that there's been Bigfoots down there for years. And he has been interviewed in the paper talking about it and things like that. So yes, the native elders all know about them. And if you look at Ohio's history, the Delaware Indians were a big tribe in the Tuscarawas River Valley. And if you look in their books and their history, they refer to things like bison, black panthers, grizzly bears, but they also note that, at nighttime, in order to keep their women and children safe, that they would always leave food out at night along the river so they wouldn't come and take them. And they called them the wild ones and claimed they walked on 2 legs and was a giant race. So I'm sure they were referring to Sasquatch there, no doubt. And here's another thing, like getting into Native Americans. Native Americans, they did everything by totem. And if it was something they were seeing, if it was eagles and bears and, panthers and cougars, they had them on totem. So when you see totems that have all those, yeah, it has an ape-looking face on it. And some of these totems are 200, 300, 400 years old. So what were they seeing way back then that looked like a gorilla? The mountain gorilla wasn't discovered or proven to like 1912, 1916, somewhere in there. And oh yeah, they're all over Vancouver, but they're also all over the country too. You got to understand that, Sammy. They're all the tribes in North America have some reference to an ape-like creature. So what were they seeing? How would they know what an ape looks like is my point. If they're carving in a totem an ape-looking face or into a rock, they have to be seeing something that fits the description of an ape-like appearance or a hairy covered man-like appearance. I mean, Bigfoot has a thick brow ridge, real deep set eyes, very flat face, broad shouldered head sits deep in the shoulders. The head almost sits forward on the shoulders. So it's a very unique looking creature. And believe me, they want to scare you, they're going to scare you, no doubt. So anyhow, anything else that we can talk about? I mean, I have all sorts of stuff to talk about. I mean, in terms of if you have questions, and I'd be glad to answer anything you want to know. But anyhow, Jennifer, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. Anyone else? I know we're running a little early on time, but I usually do a 2-hour presentation, and when I'm in person, because I do a little break in between. So, I mean, I know we might be cutting it a little early. Was that okay, Jennifer?
Oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. I appreciate you coming in. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no problem. No problem at all. I look forward maybe in the future to coming on and doing one in person.
Oh, that'd be fun. Fantastic.
I think we'd have a great time, and you know, plus, like I say, I like to explore the state. So anytime I get an opportunity. Oh, you're welcome, Zammy. Appreciate you coming on, and anyone else and everyone else who came on. I think you guys were just an amazing crowd. I mean, it just was, and I'm sorry, Troy, I hope you make it to OBC, and if you can't make it, make sure you reach out to me and let me know. We'll apply your tickets to next year. So, but anyhow, I guess from here, then I guess I can say my goodbyes and thank you again for having me. And like I say, this stuff, we'll get beyond all this stuff soon, and before you know it, we'll be back to doing all our squatchery and all our fun outside. And you know, I would tell people, keep your eyes open, keep your mind clear, be wise, wash your hands, please, and wear your mask when you go in public. I know you don't like wearing them, but when you're in public, just put it on, set an example, you know, and try to stay safe. And because before you know it, this will be all gone, and we'll be going on and you know, enjoying everything like we once did. Because believe me, stay positive and be good to people. That's important. So, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thanks everybody for coming. And have a good night.
Okay, well, we're ready to say goodbye. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Nice seeing you. Bye.
Bye.
Let's see how I get out of this now. Ha ha. It's always the fun thing. Come on. How do I leave?
I'll end it for everyone.
Yes. They'll feed us.